What's up, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of Floyd Street's Finest, presented by Great Flood Brewing Company. I am Jeff Greer, alongside my pal and the producer of this fine show, Jack Grossman. Of course, we are members of the Field of 68 Media Network. College hoops season right around the corner. Before we even get to why we're on this chat, which is to review the red-white scrimmage that we just watched here at the Yum Center. You can see behind us, Jack and I are up in the auxiliary media seating. It's kind of like box suites type stuff.
Churchill Downs-esque.
Churchill Downs-esque. I like that. I've actually never been up here, Jack. I was in the main concourse for one concert once, like years ago. I've always been in the lower bowl. So this is a unique experience to be up here. Kind of cool, though. You can see the stadium behind me, the arena behind me. But just a reminder before we get going on some takeaways from today's red-white scrimmage, to make sure that you're following the Field of 68, because the season is right around the corner. And it is time to get dialed in with all of the different great content. Of course, there's the national shows. There's the nightly reviews of things that you need to get geared up for. And those guys have a lot of fun. So make sure you're subscribed across YouTube and all the other platforms. Wherever you get your podcasts to those shows, you can enjoy them either live streaming or you can enjoy them as I often do. And I know I'm an old person for saying this, but I still like to listen to the old school podcast, which like 5 years ago was the great technology. Now
it's easy. You know, you can listen to it while driving around.
Yeah,
that's what I do most of the time.
That's
honestly,
what I do. Hey, that's where we are. Well, Jack, let's talk about this. Okay, so Louisville comes in here, and right off the top, I want to say Mike James and Jalen Withers were not available today, and Kenny Payne didn't exactly get into details of their injuries. It was phrased in a way that kind of allowed him to walk away from it without having to go into any detail. But he was asked if they were going to be available for the exhibitions that Louisville has coming up in the next 2 weeks against Chaminade and Lenore. I don't know if I'm going to
Lenoir Rain?
Lenoir, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's French.
Like yeah.
And here's the bad thing about this, Jack. I literally was on a family vacation in the town where that school is. Lenoir Rhine. I'll find it. I'll figure it out before the exhibition. Anyway, Kenny Payne was asked, I believe it was Rick Bozich who asked if Mike James and Jalen Withers will be available for those exhibitions. And he basically said, I hope so. So we don't know. We don't know the extent of everything just yet, but those two guys not being here today felt like a very significant aspect of really being able to judge this team, because my biggest takeaway from all of this is there's not a whole lot of depth. It's a pretty thin roster. We knew that coming into October, into the offseason, really. And even with the addition of Fabio Basili, I still think that there's some work to be done in the backcourt for this team to be fully viable behind El Ellis. But again, Mike James coming in will be a big plus for them. So let's scale back then. So we talked about the injuries, who wasn't here. Just big picture, Jack, your thoughts on what we saw this afternoon.
I thought we saw a lot of flashes. Obviously, a team very much that's a work in progress. Sidney Curry looked really good. El Ellis looked really good. Beyond those two, though, you saw a lot of guys to where they showed flashes. You could say, okay, I see that. You could talk yourself in to saying he can be a major piece. He can be a major player. Kamari Lands had some really nice moments. JJ Traynor had some good moments. Roosevelt Wheeler hit a mid-range jump shot, which is something that he did not do, for my recollection, last season is limited playing time. Fabio Basili had some nice moments, so where you saw a lot of moments from a lot of the other players, but really it starts with what we talked about all summer, what we expected all summer, and really something that we had kind of come a little bit off of, maybe on my end and more so than yours, Jeff, in terms of Sidney Curry and how effective he can be this year. Obviously, Kenny Payne had the comments during media days earlier this week where he wasn't really thrilled with how Sidney Curry is taken to the conditioning, but he looked really, really good today. He didn't look too overweight. He was a beast in the post. No one had an answer for him. He looked fully like the player that we talked about him earlier in the offseason and saying, okay, he's going to be one of, if not the best player on the team. El Ellis was clearly the best guard on the roster, something that we expected throughout the offseason as well. A guy that looked comfortable running the offense. Way before the question of are there any other guards other than L. Ellis, it was, is L. Ellis a point guard or a shooting guard? He looked like a point guard today. He was, he was still really aggressive looking for his own shot. He was running the offense. And the other thing is, I was interested to see, because we had Danny Manning even say it on the pod with you earlier in the summer of we could have a 6'10" guy playing two guards. Multiple guys are going to bring the ball up. And I think we saw JJ Traynor bring the ball up once. But other than that, it was the normal suspects of L. Ellis, Fabio Basili, Hersey Miller doing a lot of the ball handling, a lot of setting the offense up, which is something I found very interesting as well.
Yeah. So big picture, I do think that from a stylistic standpoint, a couple things I took away from today, and Kenny Payne talked about it in his post-game press conference or post scrimmage press conference. I don't want to say post-game press conference, but it basically said we need to pass the ball a lot. And I thought that was a noticeable thing at times, but it wasn't consistent. It was, and again, this is all with the caveat of, look, it's October. Like we expect it to be. I don't remember coming away from any scrimmage, red white scrimmage, thinking, oh, Louisville is about to blow the doors off of everyone. Although some years more than others, you could say like, yeah, this team's pretty good, or this team's going to have some work to do. But I thought that part was encouraging, I think, for Louisville to be able to show that they could do it. And there were a couple times where even though the shot missed, the ball movement and the off ball movement was good to be able to generate a good shot. And you got to think, if you get that kind of consistent action to get you those 10 shots, you got to figure if you're getting good looks, you should make most of them with a lot of the guys they have on this roster. Look, I think it's what we've kind of thought, not to be Denny Green, but it's what we thought they were. This is going to be a team that if they play themselves into NIT bubble NCAA tournament team territory, they'll be surprising all of us. The expectations are not high for them. So externally, internally, they still talk about it in those terms. Externally, people like us, I think 12th or 13th in the ACC is probably fair. I think I have them at 11th, just because I don't trust a lot of the other ACC teams. And I think it's just kind of a mixed bag after a certain point. But when you get down to it, I still think they're just missing that creativity. And that's where a guy like a Jalen Withers, if this, as you heard on our show last time we had one, was last week with Jalen Withers, he's being asked to take on some of that creativity. He was asked to do that 2 seasons ago and really struggled with it, or last season, I should say, and struggled with it. That's so we got to see it before we can say, okay, he's your other drink stirrer. But for now, it just kind of confirmed what I was expecting from this group. Jack, let's pick out. We're going to probably step on each other's toes here. So I would say Sydney Curry and L. Ellis, I think we probably agree were the two most impressive guys overall. Is that accurate? So let's throw them out, okay? Right. Because L. Ellis is the captain. He's the point guard. You expect him to step into that role. He's been obviously more vocal. He's been more out there this year on social media, all those things. Just a sign of someone who's gotten really confident. Sydney Curry had kind of his NIL glow up this summer after having some good games intermittently through the course of last season. And he does look a lot slimmer. He looks a lot quicker. He's really effective around the basket, good on the offensive glass. So let's throw those two out. We're going to do a snake draft here because I'm springing this on Jack, folks. So don't be mean to him if you don't like his picks. We'll do a snake draft. Let's pick our next four. We'll call it the next four from today. Because it's my show, I'm going to get the first pick. So I'm just throwing that out there. All right. So I'm going to say my first pick.
You're throwing your weight around there.
Yeah,
Jeff.
Yeah. I don't have much, but for this situation, I can do it. I'm gonna go next for my first pick is Kamari Lands, and
Yep.
Kamari Lands, and it is who I was picking between is Lands and JJ Trainer. JJ Trainer, I thought looked really, really good. He looks much more confident. I still think, obviously, and we kind of were talking to each other in the presser with Kenny Payne. I asked him about JJ Trainer. He gave a really good, long answer, thorough answer about JJ and what he thinks about him and where he's headed. But in the meantime, just stood out to me as a guy who was comfortable shooting. He blocked a couple shots. He jumped into a passing lane. But Kamari Lands just looks like a guy who is going to get you 14 points a game
Oh, yeah.
for Louisville all season. He looks like their wing scorer. And that's without seeing Withers and James, especially James, who I think can help them a lot from the wing. But Kamari Lands looks like a guy. He may play 2 years at Louisville, but he looks like a guy who is going to be the person they dial up to score a lot. And I told Jack this in my ACC fantasy basketball league, which is just ACC teams that I'm in. I've got he is high on my list of guys because I know he's going to get some stats. I don't know if his team's going to be good, but he's going to get some stats. So he's my pick of the next four. Jack, who's your first pick?
Yeah, I would say Kamari Lance was absolutely going to be my first pick. So I blame you for taking the first pick there from that. That because you look
Let's
at him
go.
and he just you just see the potential with him just looking on the court. He's super athletic. He's super long. He looks like the type of player that Kenny Payne says he wants to bring in. That's what he looks like.
100%.
And he scored on all three levels today. He even hit a step back three at one point. And he's far from being a finished product, which makes him incredibly interesting to follow to see how he grows throughout the year because he's a guy that I think will take some time to really get to where we think he can eventually get to. But when he does, he could be a really, really key player, not just this year, but assuming he's back next year as well. He can be a real key building block for Kenny Payne at U of L. And I know it's no fun to agree on everything, but whereas you were kind of debating between Lands and Trainer, I definitely would have gone Lands one, but Trainer is my absolute number two. And for a fantasy draft, just looking at him, he still isn't exactly, a thick body. I mean, we weren't expecting that.
I don't think he ever will be.
Yeah,
like
but
and
like
that just throws the Chris Mack thing. Like it just like, oh, he needs to add,
yeah, that's just not
20
who he
pounds of
is.
muscle. It's just like that's just not how he's built, man.
Right,
Anyway.
there was one little stretch there, maybe three possessions where Roosevelt Wheeler was on the bench and he was guarding Sidney Curry, and I was really hoping that we would get to see Curry post up on him just to see what would happen because Curry was getting his way with pretty much anyone who was on him, and obviously Trainer is a guy that has struggled against size and width and strength that Curry has. So I wanted to see what that would look like. Unfortunately, we didn't get that chance, but I really think he's a guy that if he can become a consistent threat from three, absolutely has a role on the team by either being a three behind Kamari Lands or a stretch four as well, because he looked a lot more confident. I'm right there with you with that. He was making plays off the dribble, something that we never saw from him in his first couple of years when he was, practically playing the five 2 years ago, with Chris Mack. He was the backup five to where we saw him playing a much more natural role for him. A role that didn't involve him playing in the post. So where we had all this talk last offseason, even this offseason with Jalen Withers of he's going to play his natural position. He's going to play the four. He's going to be a stretch four type guy. I think JJ Trainer is someone that's gone under the radar from that point. I've had my doubts with him because I've seen him for 2 years try to play the post and be a guy that really should not be playing the post in ACC basketball. To where if they can get him on the perimeter, and again, it all hinges on can he go out and be at bare minimum a 34, 35, 36% three-point shooter. If he can do that, because Louisville desperately needs that shooting. You talked about the ball movement. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much ball movement you have. If your guys can't knock down open shots, it's not going to matter. You need guys that can do that. And JJ Trainer is one of those guys that has a chance to fill that role.
Well, and can I just throw one more thing in on Kamari Lands to go back to that discussion for a second? I know this happens a lot, and I'm sure you think about this all the time too, Jack, because you watch as much not just Louisville, you watch as much college basketball as I do.
You can just say, Jeff, I'm a nerd.
No, I mean we're both nerds. It's okay. We're both nerds.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a proud nerd.
A proud nerd. We're
Yes.
college basketball nerds. That's good. But when you watch Kamari Lance, I mean, eh, I can't think of another description than
He was he
he's
looks
a
like a
Syracuse 3. He's a Syracuse small forward,
James
like
Sutherland.
to a T. Yeah,
James Sutherland.
like
Yeah. It's
or
I think he handles the ball better than James Sutherland did.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he's in that category. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's Benny, what is it? Benny Williams. I always forget his last name. The younger kid who just has gotten into who's been in Syracuse the last couple of years. Just lanky, 6'7", 6'8". His body is he's pretty like he's pretty contained within his body. He's
Yeah.
not like a big outward, huge impact the game beyond being 6'8" for what he is right now. But he gets rebounds, he gets into the lane, he scored at all three levels. So really liked him. And can see why Syracuse wanted him.
Yeah.
And for him to stick with Louisville after decommitting and then committing to Louisville, for him to stick with Louisville after the coaching change, it was a huge plus for Kenny Payne. All right, so before you get to your second pick, and I said I promised you a snake draft, so I took the first pick, but you get two in a row. I want to tell you a little bit about our friends over at Great Flood Brewing Company. As you can tell, probably from this Zoom, I went to a football game last night and I partook in some beverages myself. I can't decide if I look like a dad of a 9-month-old or if I look like a guy who went to a football game last night.
Well, it could be both.
Maybe both. Yeah, maybe both. But I love beer. I just love beer. I don't drink it a ton anymore because I'm getting old, but when I drink it, I enjoy it. And Great Flood makes excellent beer, but that's not all they have over at Great Flood. What a difference a few months can make. We've told you this already, and time again, you can have a beer, a bourbon, or a glass of wine at Great Flood, both the Highlands location down in Douglas Loop, as well as out in Middletown along Shelbyville Road as the weather stays nice into the fall. We're still football season, still rolling along. Enjoy the patio, or maybe duck inside if it's a little too chilly out. Enjoy the friendly staff as Louisville fans everywhere welcome what is a very exciting preseason and into the season for basketball and about halfway through football season. Great Flood says they are proud sponsors. They can't wait to serve you at their two locations. I don't know if they really believe that, but they say they believe that they're proud sponsors. So we'll take it for what they say. I like to believe that they are that they're being truthful, Jack.
Hey, I'll put it this way: you like the beer. Well, once you start getting to the cocktails, that's where they got me.
I had we went out to dinner, my wife and I, for the first time and God knows how long, just the two of us, got a babysitter. I had one glass of wine and I slept through I think 4 alarm clocks the next morning. So it's anyway.
One? Come on, Jeff.
Yeah,
that's washed. That's washed.
I know what I am. I am. I'm not showing up acting like I'm anything else. It's bad. But Jack, all right. So I took Kamari Lands, you took JJ Trainer. So you get the third pick here in the next 4. So if you skipped ahead, we picked Sidney Curry and LLS and push them to the side. We can't take them from our performers today. Mike James, Jalen Withers, not available, so they didn't play. So I took Kamari Lands. You took JJ Trainer, who is pick number 3 in the next 4.
See, I think this is, we always have with the NBA draft, the NFL draft, the first couple picks, and they say the real draft starts at 3 or at 5 or whatever we say this year. This is where this draft really begins because you have the top 2 clear cut that we threw out. Then you have obviously Kamari Lands and JJ Trainer, which I think we both felt like were the next 2. You can go pretty much anywhere on the board at this point. So I'm
so intrigued.
So I'm going to stop stalling and take Roosevelt Wheeler.
Wow. Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I was intrigued by him. He's a guy that he looks like a basketball player. He's uber athletic. He has all the physical tools. He has great athleticism. He can jump as well as anyone on the team. And being 6'10", 6'11", that says a lot. And the question with him has always been, can he catch up mentally? with that. I mean, I remember there would be games last year where he would be in the game and he would be on the offensive end, and Jared West and Mason Faulkner would be on the bench, and they would be yelling at him and pointing at him where he needed to go. And at that point, it's like, yeah, he has all these tools, but he doesn't know the offense. He doesn't know the defense at this point. He's not going to play major minutes at this stage. And you saw it better. It was better today. He didn't seem lost. He seemed to be a lot more confident than he was when he was in the game last year. And yes, Sidney Curry got the better of him a lot throughout the game, but he showed flashes. He did. That's kind of the main theme. A lot of guys showed flashes, and I'm really, I love the fact that he hit a mid-range jumper. I am a sucker for the big man that can hit a jump shot. And I know it was one jump shot, it was one time, but you're telling me you can take a guy that can catch alley-oop passes, that can block shots, that can rebound the basketball, and you can go out there and hit an occasional 18-foot jumper? That's the type of guy I want on my team, Jeff. It is.
Okay, I'll take that. I mean, yeah, I thought he looked good. I thought he looked good. I've been to so many practices where, and not with this current staff, they're a lot more guarded about practices. And I never saw practice when Rick Pitino was the head coach at Louisville. But in the interim between David Padgett and Chris Mack, I watched a lot of practices. And Roosevelt Wheeler last year, he wasn't number one on the most gotten after player.
But he was up there.
He was up there.
Yeah.
And he would get lost a lot in situations where they were trying to isolate him against a guard, or having a guard a pick and roll, and he would get into those situations and just look very uncomfortable. I thought he looked more confident in his body today. I thought he looked more comfortable trying to block shots and be physical. And that's it. I wasn't surprised. I'm not surprised that you picked him at all in this the next four. I just thought maybe
a little bit of reach, maybe.
I thought he might be the pick that I would make with the fourth pick.
I think it gets tough because I ended up picking him. I considered maybe a Fabio Basili.
Wow.
Maybe it's I really feel like it gets tough after those handful of guys. I mean, Devin Reed, the potential's there, but he wasn't phenomenal by any stretch. I was really intrigued to see him. Huntley Hatfield was you see the potential, but he's just seems like such a raw, unfinished product for me, to where I still think he's going to take a lot of time, and he seems farther away to me than Kamari Lands was. And again, you're a guy that is around the team more than I am, so I'm just judging it off of the one scrimmage. But to me, Roosevelt Wheeler showed enough to where I said, okay, I'll take a flyer on Rose Wheeler.
Well, that's the thing. So this was my first chance to see them too. And for me, I think Huntley Hatfield, there's something about him that you kind of, he would, if I had the third pick here, I would have taken him. I like the potential there with the athleticism, the length. When he was transferring, I had been told by a few different people that Tennessee staff would get frustrated with him, thinking too much that he's a wing, he tries too much to be a skill guy.
Which we didn't see a whole lot of that.
Didn't see a ton of it. He was facing up quite a bit, but he was also paired with Curry. I'm curious to see if they're going to play him at stretch 4, or if he's going to split time with Curry. That's something that we'll have to see. But I do think he's got a lot of athleticism. I think the ability to finish around the rim was showed off a couple of times through contact, which is a good skill to have with his length and size. And then you throw in what will be another 6'9-ish, 6'10-ish guy in Jalen Withers. And it's just intriguing. That whole group is intriguing. So, but to your point, one other thing on Roosevelt Wheeler, who I thought he would be the pick that I would get at 4 because you picked BHH at 3. Here's the thing. Louisville has a bunch of guys who you kind of say this year, and I wrote this in my newsletter. So if you want to read the newsletter, it comes out every Thursday morning. You can subscribe jeffgreer.substack.com. I had to get the pitch in there, Jack.
Oh, of course.
You got to get it in there.
Yeah.
But I've written about this. Like Louisville has maybe, once they come back, Withers and James, I think, will be elevated into the Ellis and Curry group, and Komari Lands is probably in that group. Maybe BHH, but there's like 3 or 4 guys who you think, I don't know what their minutes are going to be. I'm intrigued to find that out. Trainer is in there.
Yeah.
Roosevelt Wheeler's in there. And I'm starting to believe it's either going to be one or the other of Hersey Miller or Fabio Basili. I'm not sure if they can afford to play both of them very much.
Agreed.
Right now, there are some flashes from both of them. To me, Hersey Miller looks like he's ahead, just physically, but I think Basili also really came on and scored a lot more later in the game and looked a lot more comfortable than he did at first. The problem is combined, I think they had like 9 turnovers.
Yeah, it was definitely a sloppy point. The red team had 20.
Yeah,
on the game. Yeah,
it's not great. But here's the deal: like with Wheeler, with Trainer, all of those
they
guys
had exactly
we're talking about.
9 combined for what
There
it's
you go.
worth. Yeah,
there you go. Those guys, they're not where their potential could be. So they're still somewhere on their timeline of development ahead of, they're not the Ross that they've ever been, and they're not a final product, and maybe they never will be. But for a guy like Roosevelt Wheeler, look, if he plays 4 years for Louisville, which maybe he will, or maybe he has a breakout junior year after all the other guys who are around him in that position move on, and he plays a lot next year, maybe that's his big development payoff year. But right now, Roosevelt Wheeler doesn't have to give you 20 minutes. He doesn't have to give you 18 minutes. He's probably in that 10 to 15 range, closer to 10 probably, where Sidney Curry comes out. If he's the 5 and he's rotating with him and they play BHH and Withers at the 4, Wheeler comes in and gives you energy minutes. And we saw last year he can be an energy guy. That's kind of his vibe off the court too. He's got a nice personality. The teammates talk about how funny he is. He's a favorite in the locker room. So if he can pair that with the basketball side of it and block some shots, get some offensive rebounds, maybe get a putback or 2, and just not look lost, that's all you need from him.
Yeah.
That's all you need from him. And that's nice. That's a nice thing to have in a 10-man, maybe it's an 8-man rotation by February. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that if I'm Louisville, to just see him be impactful for that small part that he needs to be impactful for.
Just be a spark plug.
Be a spark plug. Yeah. And then you need to, the thing is, if he's going to do that and you have to fill in front of him, if he's your say he's your 8th man, maybe your 9th man, you need 6, 7, and 8 to be similar, but a little bit more impactful. And that's where it's like, okay, is it JJ Trainer? He looked really good today. Maybe he's your 6th man. You probably need one of Basili or Miller to play regular
just
minutes
to give L a breather.
Yeah, yeah, like 10 minutes. So that's where you're starting to get into, you can't have too many guys who are, hey, just give us 10 minutes. And they have a bunch of them right now, scholarship guys who are just give us 10 minutes and see if you can spell the guy in front of you. And that's problematic. You need guys who can be impact players when they're spelling someone. And I think Wheeler can be that, but I just don't know if the guards are there yet.
Right.
So, all right, last thing then. Because we could talk about this forever. I know we've got some exhibitions coming up that we'll have another opportunity to study these guys. Thoughts on Kenny Payne's sideline demeanor?
To me, this is just hard to tell in a scrimmage because it's such an unusual situation. It's something that they're not going to do the rest of the year. I did notice, I believe it was either the end of the second or the third period, where Fabio Basili, the white team had turned the ball over, and he's kind of, not hustling back on defense, and he was kind of cherry picking a little bit. And the white team actually got a turnover back. They throw it up to him, and he dunks the ball right as the buzzer sounds. And I noticed Kenny Payne during the timeout, right after that, he comes over to the white team, and he's very clearly like talking to Fabio Basili, saying something along the lines of, hey, don't feel so great about that dunk. You should have been busting your ass back on defense, is what I can imagine that conversation going.
A little bit of don't ever do that again.
Yes, but you could kind of see where that could potentially be coming from there. And like you got to make sure you get your butt back on defense type of deal, to where you did see a glimpse of it there. But I thought a lot of it, he was very reserved at times. He was kind of just watching on at times, and really he didn't interject a whole bunch, at least not from what I noticed. Feel free to totally disagree with me on that, but he, when he did, it was very much, it seemed to be forceful. I'm making a point, listen to me, and really commanding the room, which is what you want to see from the head coach, frankly. That's something that's going to be an adjustment for him, sliding over, as he likes to say, those 18 inches.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I even made it a topic of talking about, is just, that's the main story for this year.
Yeah.
That's the main storyline. It's just Kenny Payne as a coach, flat out. And so we obviously didn't get to see like a ton of adjustments or anything like that. Substitution patterns aren't a factor in an intra-squad scrimmage. Interaction with his assistants, I had said, I'd be interested to see what that looks like in this game. Wasn't really a ton of that because they were split up. So even then, it's kind of like, okay. But that was the first time, Jack. That was the first time, the post-game presser, that I have been in the same room as Kenny Payne outside of when he was on Kentucky's staff at a basketball game. That's the first time I've been in a press conference. I've watched a lot of them. As schedules don't allow me to typically go to watch a press conference at like 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, but you can feel it when you're in the room. You're like, yeah, he's got some gravitas to him.
Yeah.
He's got some charisma. And I thought it was interesting, and it kind of fit with what I thought it would be. But very reserved, as you said, on the sidelines. And then so when he does pull someone aside and he's talking to them, I think it carries a lot of weight. His words carry a lot of weight. So I was interested watching him, and I do think that we'll get a much better idea with the exhibitions what he's like, but certainly understand why there's an attraction to him by his players, because it's a swag, it's a calmness to him that
it's a very directness. It comes off very honest. Like he's not wasting his words when he's talking to players.
I would waste my words. Yes. I would waste my words.
Absolutely. I waste a lot of words every day for a living. That's
what we do. We waste words for a living. He does not. He packs a punch with what he says. And I thought that was really interesting. Well, Jack, let's sign off with this then. Who do you think, which player should I try to get next on Floyd Street's Finest? Who's your vote?
After today, because I don't think we've had Kamari Lands, right?
We have not had Kamari Lands. We scheduled Kamari Lands.
That's what it was.
When he was a prospect and he was a commitment. He had signed, and I forgot what happened. He had to reschedule, and when you have to reschedule, it's probably not going to happen. So now he's back he's in the fold. He's in town. Let's get him on. How about that? I'll ask our pal Zach Greenwell tonight. I will ask him to get ISO Kamari onto the podcast. ISO Lands. What is it? ISO Mari. That's it. I was going to get there eventually. I'm feeling older by the day. As we were walking up to record this Zoom here, this chat for our podcast this week, I was telling Jack I was trying to figure out if Young Gravy was a spoof, parody rapper, if he's a real rapper, and Jack is like, I don't know.
I am the wrong person to ask. It was the exact answer.
This podcast is just tanking. I mean, just absolutely tanking with this performance today. So.
Yeah, give me James Sutherland. I can tell you James Sutherland.
Hey, we're in preseason mode just like everybody else. This was our intra-squad scrimmage too, so be easy on us. But all right, I will ask about Kamari Lands, a fascinating figure, interesting guy, and obviously from a basketball family, and clearly is going to be a key piece for Louisville this season. So, Jack, thank you for chatting.
My pleasure as always.
Yeah, we'll do this frequently through the course of the season, breaking things down. And we hope that everyone out there enjoys this episode. But that being said, I am going to go hang out with my child and eat some really bad food. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.